Michelle Promoleco. She is an award-winning print and digital editor. She is the editor, director at large for The Well, and the author of the new book and healthy eating plan, Sugar Free 3. Previously, she was the editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan. Before that, she was the editor-in-chief of Yahoo Health and Women's Health magazine. And also tonight we have Alisa Vitti. She is the founder of FLO Living, the modern hormone healthcare company, and a functional nutrition and women's hormone expert, a pioneer of women's biohacking, author of the period Bible Women Code, and creator of the best-selling period app on iTunes, My FLO. Also tonight, after the discussion, followed by the Q&A, she will be doing a book signing in the back, so be sure to check out her book, In the FLO, if you don't already have it. And without further ado, we're going to get started. So thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Is this working? Hi, everybody. How's it going? It's my first time at this wing. It's gorgeous and enormous.
It's so beautiful, but mostly
I just want to move in.
because it's filled with smart, amazing people.
Yeah, exactly. And yummy food, it looks like. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Michelle.
Congrats on the amazing launch.
Thank you.
Just happened yesterday? 2 days ago.
Tuesday.
Okay. Well, before we jump into talking about the book, why don't we talk a little bit about your personal health struggles that led you to becoming a functional nutritionist and what I like to call the hormone whisperer. Because that's really what you are.
So I was someone who, years ago was struggling with my hormones, and I know you know this story, but how many of you here are people who know FLO Living, who've read Woman Code? Hi, everybody. So you guys know my story.
Some people know.
You guys know, but the long and short of it is, in my late teens, early 20s, I found myself 50 pounds heavier than I am now, covered face, chest, and back in cystic acne. And from the ages of 12 to 22, got my period only 6 times, and 2 of those were chemically induced with synthetic progesterone, which if anybody's ever had chemically induced periods with synthetic progesterone, it's not a fun time. I will assure you of that. And I wanted to know why. What was going on? I went to doctor after doctor, and no one had any answers for me. And I was a student at Johns Hopkins, planning to become an OBGYN, and so what does a girl do on a Saturday night when she can't sleep because she's got all these hormonal problems? You bet it. I was in the library researching, and I found an article that as I was reading these symptoms after symptoms, it was ringing all the bells for me of, this is me. So I stalked my gynecologist the next morning in the parking lot, and I said, we've got to do some tests that no one has ever done. And then, in fact, she confirmed my diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome. And then the big thing happened that really changed, or set me on the trajectory of the career that I have been working on for the past 20 years. I said, great, now we know what it is. What can we do? Because when you've gone undiagnosed for 7 years, if anybody here has a chronic illness, you can be, it's very, very frustrating. You're not sure what it is. When you get the information of what it is that you have, it's almost better news than, even though it's slightly bad news. So I said, what can we do? She said, I'm so sorry, but there's not much we can do. We can't actually cure you, but I can give you lots of different medication as your symptoms will invariably progress and worsen. So, we can put you on medication for the diabetes you will inevitably get. We can, treat your acne with other medications. We can put you on birth control so that you get some sort of synthetic period. And you probably won't be able to have children, so when you want to do that, we can try to put you on sort of, IVF and see if that works. There I am, young, 20-something, 21, 20.
Yeah, and I just want to say that you're the only person that I know that would end up in the library when you have insomnia. I'd be like binging some TV show. Just wanted to straighten that out. But you did not get the answers that you wanted, and so you sought them yourself.
I just decided that in that moment I could use all the research skills that I had learned while at Hopkins to try to figure this out. And so I sort of dove into chronobiology, epigenetics, functional nutrition, and really figured out how to recalibrate the endocrine system. And it was eye-opening to see that this alternate version of reality, this picture that had been painted for me of what my health was going to be like, did not end up being the case at all. I mean, I lost 50 pounds, I cleared up my skin, I restored my ovulation and my cycle, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I'm no longer, depressed, anxious, and insomniacal, so that's a plus too.
And now you have all the acumen to write these incredible books and have your business and then disseminate all that information that you've learned. So
well, I made a promise to myself because I knew that for me it was just so isolating, it was so frustrating to not have any answers, and this was 20 years ago, so there was not like, Googling things. And so I said, I would love to, if I can figure this out, build a platform that helps other women who are going through chronic GYN issues to have a place where they can go to get the information that is accurate, that is more, full picture of what's possible, and then get their hand held with the support that they need to actually make these changes and not feel overwhelmed and stressed and isolated. So that's where Flow Living was born.
You've done just that.
Yeah.
Well, since we're at the wing, I think it makes sense to unpack the somewhat misogynistic narrative that we've been given our whole lives about how our hormonal, cycles are a liability. And you have the exact opposite perspective on that, don't you?
Well, I mean, listen, whether it's by design...
I mean, we've been told it's just something, it's a hindrance, right. Something that we have to, we do have to deal with it, but that it's going to get in our way.
The cultural narrative is a problem because it's toxic, false propaganda that your hormones are destined to be a curse. From a scientific point of view, from a biological point of view, especially after I put this all in this new book, you got the biological sort of like long end of the stick, it turns out, not the short end of the stick. And this idea that your hormones are the curse, this changing nature of your hormones is a problem to be avoided. This is part of a misogynistic culture that, whether it's by design or not, it really leaves us in a position to be not empowered with the correct information to take care of our bodies in a way that allows us to thrive in other areas of our lives. Because I know firsthand what it feels like to not have your hormones working, to be so unbalanced that your brain is foggy, your energy is low, your moods are destabilized. This isn't just about are you having PMS or not. This is if your body is performing suboptimally, then you're limited in how you can perform in other areas of your life outside of your health. And I know that I lost a good 10 years in the opportunity cost of my health issues that I can't get back. But I'm on a mission to make sure that no other woman has this experience of unnecessarily losing time.
Yeah, because it influences everything, and as you said, it's like once you can harness the power of your hormones, then it just filters down into so many other areas of your life. Which brings us to the new book. So I know from talking to you that you were motivated or maybe inspired to write the new book by thinking about the fact that we have more wellness information and access to services than we've ever had before, yet more women have hormonal issues than ever before. And so what did you discover when you kind of took a deeper dive?
I mean, that's just the funny thing. I mean, I've been taking care of women for 20 years, as you know, and in the past 10 years, there's been a geometric growth in the content that we have access to, right? I mean, you can now go online and there's plenty of articles about periods and plenty of articles about hormones and supplements, and yet the statistics are showing that now over 50% of women are struggling with hormone and autoimmune issues. So I look at that like wellness everywhere, but we're not getting any better. And so I wanted to answer that question, and I found that there are two reasons. One, turns out that almost all medical, fitness, and nutrition research is being done on men and postmenopausal women, but it is being shared as universally applicable. And I can dive into that in a minute with like the trendy diets, because you gotta know what's going on.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to those.
So that's number one, and that's really important. So anytime you're reading an article and it says, do research shows that this is great new thing that you should be doing, I would really love to see that there's like full disclosure of, oh, this study was done on this cohort and we're still figuring out if it's applicable to other groups versus what we're being told now. So that's problem number one. In fact, it's such a problem from a medical point of view. In 1996, the National Institute of Health put out a special task force committee because they're so concerned. They know that it's dangerous not to have enough studies being done on women, but yet they're doing procedures and dosing them with drugs, and they're doing it in a way that's just as if you have a smaller BMI as a man. And that's just not great medicine. And so they put this task force out to encourage more clinical trials, including younger women. And as of the update in 2016, progress report was slim to marginal.
And is that because it'll take years from now to actually have the research that's being done, or the problem just hasn't been corrected?
1996 to 2016, that's plenty of time
still
for research.
doing,
There's just some
still
gender bias.
like small men.
I wonder why. Gender bias, and so I said, well, where's the gender bias coming from? And this sort of led me to the second thing. So it turns out the other big exciting thing is why are we all suffering with so many issues, hormone, autoimmune, mental health issues, emotional issues? What's going on? Why are we all so fundamentally disrupted? Why are our systems performing suboptimally? You have a special second biological clock, a biological rhythm. It has a name that I am certain none of you know about. I am so excited to share it with you tonight because this changes the game. So we all know about the circadian clock, yes, and we all know, how many of you wear blue light blocking glasses to protect your melatonin production? Thank you. If you're not wearing them, get some. And so you know that it's dangerous, right, because of the famous nurses study to disrupt your circadian rhythm. It will affect your health both in the short term but also in the long term, increasing your risk for big disease and inflammation. Your second biological clock has a name. It is called the infradian rhythm. I will spell it for you so you can write it down. INFRADIAN. Infradian. So your circadian rhythm takes 24 hours. Your infradian rhythm, you experience it over the course of a month within the span of your cycle, whether that's 26 days or 28 days or 30 days. It's about a month, okay? Now, you're thinking, well, gee, isn't that just my period? No. The infradian rhythm affects 6 key systems of your body, and this is why everybody's so disrupted. It affects your brain system, your microbiome, your metabolism, your immune system, which is particularly important if you're suffering with autoimmune issues, your stress response system, and your reproductive system. Because we're all operating in a way, living, eating, working out, to try to squeeze everything into the circadian pattern, we are fundamentally living, eating, exercising, working in ways that disrupt our infradian rhythm and cause 6 systems of our body to perform suboptimally. You got me? Majorly important.
Yeah, no, that is majorly important because, to your point earlier, if you know how to work with your biochemical system, you can then optimize, which is what we're all trying to do all the time.
And that biohacking should be biological rhythm specific, right? So if you have an active biological, an active infradian rhythm, you should be optimizing for that. You should be biohacking for that.
Right, explain just clarify what active means. It's during your reproductive years.
From your first period to your last, from puberty to your last bleed, you have an active infradian rhythm. And children, men, and anyone who is postmenopausal would have just an active circadian rhythm. So you have access to this amazing second clock, which you're going to learn more about why it's so amazing in a minute, for about 4 decades. And what you do, just like we know the circadian rhythm, if you disrupt it in your younger years, it increases the risk for you to have diseases of inflammation in your older years. The same is true. If you start supporting, right, your infradian rhythm while it's active, you decrease your risk for disease of inflammation postmenopausally. So it's such an effective, elegant, and efficient way to care for yourself instead of worrying about, gee, what can I do to promote my brain health? What can I do to support my metabolism? What can I do to balance my hormones? What can I do to support my microbiome? You're chasing a lot of different ducks, and you're not going to get anywhere. But if you can just more efficiently learn how to biohack with your infradian rhythm, it will change the game.
I think somewhere in the book you say, learn how to rock your second clock. Or maybe it was in your book materials or something. And I was like, I don't know, there's another book title.
I've been writing this book for 2 years.
So you started to sort of hint at some of the kind of trendy dietary and lifestyle habits that we know about: keto, you know, other things, intermittent fasting, some workout trends that aren't right for all of us, although some of us might want to do them. So I want to hear why they're not right and what we can do about it if we still feel attracted to that, say, eating trend or fitness trend, and we want to be a part of it.
Okay, so here's the deal. High intensity interval training, intermittent fasting, and keto, the research and all the studies that you have heard, the reports of the benefits. How many of you have heard how it's beneficial to do intermittent fasting? Yes. It's beneficial. It's like the best kind of workout you could do is high intensity interval training. Yes. Okay. That research has been done on men and postmenopausal women, and the small amount of studies which I dug up and put in this book for you so you are clear is that intermittent fasting, ketogenic diets, and high-intensity interval training workouts are not good for you with an active infradian rhythm. They do the extreme opposite of what all the purported benefits are. So let's take intermittent fasting. In your active infradian rhythmic years, you will have a worsening of insulin sensitivity. You will have an increase in brain fog. You will have a reduction in your metabolic speed. You will have a potential weight gain, and oh, no big deal, it will shrink your ovaries. I know, it's like jaw-dropping. So it's really important that you know that, because there is a safe way to do intermittent fasting, which I outline in the book, but it is not this extended fast that is safe for men and postmenopausal women. When you are a year away from your last bleed, please do as much intermittent fasting as you possibly can so that you can reap the benefits that are well documented for you once your infradian rhythm has stopped, right? High intensity interval training, I'm gonna break down your metabolism in a minute, but how the infradian rhythm affects your metabolism, but it turns out that if you do high intensity interval training all throughout the month, right? Because like, you know, I walk by the signs, you know, these gyms and places, and it's great. It's like, just commit, just do it. I'm like, to what? Commit to your biological rhythm? No, thank you. So, you know, what you need to be doing is recognizing that if you do the same workout each and every day, it's going to turn on fat storage and turn on muscle wasting. How many of you have like...
Just got everyone's attention in the room, but yeah.
And I mean, this came out of like, you know, I don't know, it was like a decade ago, there was this trend in fitness, I'm sure you remember, where everybody was training for a triathlon to just get back in shape. And I had client after client coming to me saying, I don't understand, I've been running, swimming, and bicycling every day, and I've put on 20 pounds after the race or whatever it is. And
no, yeah, that brings about, as a health and wellness editor, obviously I've heard all these things before, but not knowing the why behind it. And often there's a male trainer or coach who's trying, their intention is
very
to help.
good intentions.
And you feel like it's a failure of your own will or your body.
Exactly.
And really it's just working against your biology.
We are playing the wrong biological rhythmic game. So for men with in their younger years, they make all the testosterone they're going to make while they sleep. They wake up at 5 a.m. full of testosterone and cortisol. They should absolutely set up a schedule that has them optimizing for that hormonal ratio, meaning getting up as early as they can, doing intense workouts, and having a very regular routine, right? Because they fall off the energy cliff at the end of the day and that's it. You have a very different reality. Your metabolism changes throughout the month. So in fact, your metabolism is slower in the follicular and ovulatory phase of your cycle, and it is faster in the luteal and the menstrual phase. So you think, oh great, so I should just do the same thing all of the time. This is what we've been told. We've been told biologically that we have the less optimal metabolism, so we have to overcompensate for it. Again, another total baseless lie. You have a super efficient metabolism, in fact, and when your metabolism is slower, I outlined for you in the book which workouts you should be doing to supercharge your metabolism. When it's faster, you definitely do not want to be doing high intensity interval training. So studies show that if you do that in the second half of your cycle, you're going to, basically negate any benefits that you've reaped from working out intensely in the first half of your cycle by turning on fat storage and turning on muscle wasting.
So what you're describing right now is really your solution for all the things that we've been talking about, which is your cycle syncing method. So that's really what it's about, is figuring that method out.
Yeah, so after identifying this problem that we're all disrupting our infradian rhythm by just not being given the correct information, it's none of your fault. We've just been deprived of this information by research not being done and us not having access to this information. So I wanted to create the solution. How do we optimize? How do we biohack? How do we support our infradian rhythm? This has never been done before. What does it look like? How many of you would like to know what that looks like? Okay, good. I'm so glad. It's not a diet. It's not anything. This is just this is you taking care of your biological reality, and that's it. And once you start doing that, every system of your body starts to perform optimally, and it's amazing what kind of energy gain you're going to get from that. But that's the hope. We'll get there. So the cycle syncing method is the solution I created. You're going to learn all about it in the new book, In the FLO. But basically it outlines a method, a practice, a way for you to organize your food to optimize your metabolism in each of the 4 distinct hormonal patterns of your infradian cycle, right, of your menstrual cycle. So you're going to be eating calorically differently, because, by the way, you need 237 more calories in the second half of your cycle than you do in the first half. So you have to eat more, but you also have to eat different kinds of foods. And then because your metabolism changes, right, it's faster in the second half and your resting cortisol levels are higher in the second half, you actually have to decrease the intensity of working out that you're doing in order not to jack up cortisol levels, turn on fat storage, and disrupt mental focus and clarity, right? And also, it'll also increase inflammation and stress in the body. So really doing this is not like a nice idea, this is a must do, because your body will suffer if you do the wrong things at the wrong time. And so, I joke with you all the time when people interview me, they're like, for media, they're like, what's your favorite food to eat to balance hormones? I said, we gotta stop asking what, and we have to start asking when. So that's what I want you to start thinking and taking away from tonight is, it's not so much the what, that is important, but that's part of the managing of the when. When should you eat particular food? When should you do a particular exercise? Now this is just the physical care piece. There was another piece of research that I stumbled upon that I don't know, we should probably all wear t-shirts because it's so exciting. In 1996, Dr. Catherine Woolley at Northwestern University did a groundbreaking bit of research on women in their reproductive years. I don't know, maybe it's because she's a woman, she decided to do it. Regardless, we have a lot to thank her for, because she discovered that women's brains change up to 25% over the course of the infradian cycle. That is super exciting, empowering information for you, because the cycle syncing method is not just about optimizing your physical well-being, it's also about learning how to play to your neurohormonal strengths. And don't get me wrong,
this is a room of high-performing women, probably a lot of entrepreneurs. We all need to boost our brain power as much as possible, and feeling foggy is about the worst feeling ever. So this is about biohacking your brain.
Why not? If you knew that you had predictable changes in your brain chemistry that were going to make you naturally inclined to do certain activities, wouldn't you want to organize your activities when those things were happening? Again, when, right? Not what, when. And so it's really exciting to be able to know that, for example, during your ovulatory phase, your brain is super stimulated by estrogen in the verbal and social centers of your brain. So if you have networking events to schedule a month from now, schedule them for then. If you want to go on a first date, do it then. If you want to ask for a raise, do it then, right? These are just some examples. There are chart after chart after chart of things in the books to help you understand what things you should be doing when, so you don't have to nerd out on this as much as I have. But it's exciting because people ask me all the time, how do I get so much done? I have a kid, I have a husband, I have a company, I write books, I come and talk sometimes. And if I didn't biohack my brain and didn't organize the timing of all of my projects in a way that really decreased my stress levels and kept them low by focusing and prioritizing the things that felt easier for me to do in a given moment, I don't think I would be able to do it.
You can come and organize my closet during your most, like, the phase that you're strongest in organization, because I can only imagine what your house looks like, even with a 5-year-old.
You know, it's just
about getting other people, though. Like, how do you get other people? It's really about, like, if you're choosing the date for the networking event, or you're choosing, you know, the date for the first date, whatever, then you can figure it out. But it's also a little bit of getting, I don't know, working your family organization around it. How do you get other people on board, or you don't need to?
Here,
What about your whole staff?
let's use it.
that?
Let's use it. I go to corporations and I teach women in these teams how to use the cycle syncing method at work. And that is always the question. It's like, don't we have to all be synced up? No. First of all, no. And second of all, no one needs to know what you are doing. Here's a way to say it in the inverse. Do men walk into corporate culture and say, my testosterone is peaking, we have to do all of this stuff before 3 o'clock? Do they say that? No, they do not.
They just schedule 6 a.m. meetings.
And 4 p.m. happy hour, because that is what works for their biochemistry.
It's all making so much sense.
And that's why corporate culture is sometimes very difficult scheduling-wise for you, because it's not optimizing your biological reality, it's optimizing a different biological reality. And that's fine. It's just, I'm not asking for anything major here. I'm just saying we are equal and we are different, and we should each be given the freedom to support and our own biological rhythms and do what's optimal for them without having to have some sort of big corporate change. It's just do what works for you, schedule what works for you as much as you can. Now, there are plenty of times when the things that I'm going to have in the chart that you're going to look at are not going to be something that you can plan for, because deadlines happen, things happen. That's okay. So this takes me to one other funny little anecdote, which is I used to be, well, not used to be, I'm a self-confessed very proud nerd. I love studying and research, and as a young person, I was always very eager to squeeze in as much learning as I could every day. And I said, gee, Alisa, 16-year-old Alisa, if I could just learn how to manage my time more efficiently, then I could get more done. Maybe get into Harvard. Hopkins took me away. So I studied all these different time management planners, and I did all the, name the names, Franklin Covey and Tony Robbins, what, bullet journals. I tried all these things. How many of you try these different things, or you try a power morning routine, and you do it for a couple of weeks, and then you just can't do it, and the whole thing makes you angry, and then you feel like a failure before your day has even started? Please, hands up. You are not alone. Okay, so here's a why. So the female brain is much more complex than the male brain. There's a whole section on the majestic nature of your extremely powerful brain that you need to read in this book, so that you know for certain how wired for leadership you are. That's just one little aside. But the other thing is, because of that, you need 20 minutes more of sleep per night compared to your male counterparts. So this whole idea of the power morning is terrible for you, okay? In fact, depending on where you are in the infradian cycle, you may find that in certain parts of the cycle you can wake up earlier and you can do the workouts that are optimal for that phase, but in the second half, doing that is actually going to jack up your cortisol levels, cause you to have brain fog the whole day, disrupt your insulin levels the whole day. Not good, right? So there's that, plus these time management planners only factor in the circadian rhythm. So you're very welcome. I built you a time management system. It's in chapter 6. It's the first planner that incorporates both the circadian and the infradian rhythm. I built this for myself, so you'll be able to plan your days with your infradian rhythm in mind across the month, and I hope that it serves you.
But you're still not gonna let me have coffee first thing in the morning on an empty stomach.
Never.
Lisa crushed my dreams many years ago. She was the first person who ever told me, well, you did have a solution, because you always have a solution.
You're a fast metabolizer of caffeine, right?
I don't know.
You are.
But
I know that you are.
But you had a solution, which was to do bulletproof coffee, because I was like, I'm gonna have to have my coffee in the morning. So you always have a solution, but at first I was like,
now listen, I'm somebody who is relatively high energy. I have a child, I have a business. I've been caffeine free for 20 years, sugar, dairy, and gluten free for 20 years. It's totally doable. And where does my energy come from? My energy comes from this 20-year practice of doing the cycle syncing method and supporting my infradian rhythm. So instead, because what happens when you are constantly in opposition to the natural patterns of your hormones and your metabolism and your immune system and your brain function is that you're constantly draining your energy.
yeah, it's definitely working against your energy, but I'm still not giving up my coffee.
Well, but the opposite is that you will need less of that stimulation. You will need, and in fact, if you do this kind of basic biohacking of your infradian rhythm, you'll find that you need less extreme biohacking, that men need more, because they do fall off that energy cliff at 3 o'clock. They stop making testosterone, their cortisol levels dip. One of my husband's co-workers, she told this to me the other night. She said, we call it the typical testosterone drop-off at 3 o'clock, and we walk around the office with like cookies and chocolate to see if like any guy needs a little pick-me-up, because we see them like nodding off at their desk. And it is really true that we all have these different patterns, but women, you're more efficient users of nutrients, and you're more conserving of your energy. So if you actually start to really eat and exercise according to the cycle syncing method, you're going to continuously be banking energy in your bank account, as opposed to what's happening now, which is that you're constantly draining it. And how do you know that you're constantly draining it? Is how do you feel during the 5 days leading up to your period and when you are bleeding? Do you feel like me right now, 5 days before my period? If you don't feel like me, then you're disrupting your infradian rhythm. And this is how you can feel super energized and fine.
Yeah, I don't know one person who could use more energy.
Constantly. I mean, we're just so sick, stressed, and exhausted, burned out.
Doesn't crave more energy.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm the former editor-in-chief of Cosmo, I am obligated to ask about sex and relationships. It's like a lifelong contract I signed. So you say that you can also sync your orgasm to your cycle. And also things like commitments and breakups, which I find really fascinating too.
Seriously.
She's got it all down.
So there's a sad situation happening that I want to point out to all of you in case this is happening, because 60% of women are sexually unsatisfied. So that means more than half of us in this room right now are not having access to our optimal pleasure and pleasurable response potential. And why that's a problem is because orgasm, not climax, but the part that leads up to climax, which is called your orgasmic plateau, which you'll learn about in the book, has tremendous health benefits on your entire infradian cycle, every system of your body, and is certainly one of the reasons why my skin looks so good all the time. But the reason why so many of us, I mean, like, it's a very common phenomenon, right? Where sometimes you're having an encounter with yourself, with your partner, and you're like, gee, it was like fireworks yesterday, and now it's like, meh. And we don't know why that is, right? And just like you were saying earlier about that you do the diet, you do the workout, you try one of these trendy things, you work with a trainer, and you're not getting results, and at the end of it you think, gee, something's wrong with me. The same thing happens with our sexuality, in the sense that when we feel like, why are there fireworks sometimes and now there's not, we think, what's wrong with my libido? Maybe I have a problem. Why am I dry this time? What's going on? the fact of the matter is your sexual response and the amount of stimulation that you need and the amount of outside support that you need in the form of lubricant is different specifically across the infradian cycle. And you need to know when you need lubricant, when you need more foreplay and clitoral stimulation, when you need less of it to achieve maximum pleasurable response, all of these things. And to be able to communicate that to your partner if you have one, or to yourself if you are just with yourself, so that you can always have the maximum orgasmic response that you're capable of, because it's so good for you.
And you have an aspect of your app that allows you to share that information if you want, right?
Absolutely. So when I launched My Flow, one of the things that I wanted to do was to make sure that women could empower their partners to have access to this basic information about where they are in their cycle and what they can do to interact more effectively as a partner. So it's called Partner Sync. You just drop in their email address, and then
they get a surprise in their inbox. Get ready.
Can I tell you, I get love letters from the people getting these, like, the hormonal dossier. It's basically like a little, it's kind of like James Bond. It's like, okay, you know, your lady is in her follicular phase. Take her out for a new dance class and use lube. And they're like, got it. And then I get love letters from both people saying, wow, I feel like such a champion with my partner. She's so happy with the things I suggested. And the partner's like, God, I just feel like my partner psychically knows exactly what I want. This is the best thing ever. And, you know, we don't have to be psychic. We can use the facts of our biochemistry. This is not like just some fun, like, horoscope, like, nice idea. Like, this is facts. This is just what is happening inside your body and what your brain wants. And if you can just understand what these predictable patterns are, you can leverage it in so many areas of your life.
Like when you break up with somebody. No, it's like that has more to do with decision making, right?
Well,
it's like when optimal decision making happens.
Well, you make optimal decisions all the time. Don't get me wrong. It's just that when it comes to relationships and breaking up or getting committed, right? This is part of the legacy of, like, this misogynistic conversation, right? How many of you have heard things like, oh, I'm hormonal? How many of you, like, maybe even just say that sometimes to other people about yourself? Can we get them up high? Okay, it's everybody. You're hormonal. Cats and dogs and children and old people are hormonal. You know who's not hormonal? Dead people. Okay, everyone has hormones. Hormones govern the conversation between all your brain and your glands and your organs. Without hormones, you are not living, okay? So to say that you're hormonal, do you see that's part of the misogynistic rhetoric that says your hormones as a female are not to be trusted. Yeah. Don't trust yourself. And so this is where the breakup thing comes into play, because during your luteal phase, ladies, your hormones stimulate your brain in such a way that as estrogen is decreasing and progesterone is increasing, you're not interested in smoothing things over and making things nice. You're more like, okay, this is what is happening. And then when you get to the bleeding phase, right, your right and left hemispheres of your brain are communicating maximally across the corpus callosum, which is the bundle of nerve fibers that connects the two hemispheres of your brain, making you super intuitive, even though the part of your brain that governs intuition is bigger in all females at all times. During this week when you're bleeding, you are like super intuitive, superpower intuitive. So let's say the week before you're like, gee, that thing my partner does, it really, really bothers me. And then during the bleeding week, you're like, okay, I'm going to evaluate this now officially. And you're going to give yourself 2 or 3 cycles, right? If it's this pattern, every ovulatory phase, all you want to do is jump this person. But then luteal phase and menstrual phase, you want to just break up with them, and that happens 3 cycles in a row. What are you going to trust? Yourself. And you're using these changing hormonal patterns to your advantage to get to the truth with a capital T. So whether that's breaking up or getting committed, cycling through these different facets of your brain chemistry really gives you a huge edge.
I love that. Okay, let's put it out to the audience. I'm sure there's questions. So I know there's a couple mics floating around. Raise your hands if you have questions.
Yes.
Any advice for those of us on birth control?
Great question.
All of this applies to having a menstrual cycle and how chemicals can affect that.
I'm so glad you asked that question. So the book has 10 chapters, but there are 2 stealth interstitial chapters between section 2 and section 3. And one of the chapters that doesn't have a number is all about the birth control. There's a new bunch of research that's just come out. Dr. Sarah Hill has spearheaded this, and she's got a new book, so you're familiar. Here's the quick and dirty on it. When you're taking synthetic birth control, whether it's in the form of a pill or a ring or an insertable, whatever, you're fundamentally changing your personality. You're no longer the you that you were before you were on this medication. Brain chemistry-wise, creativity-wise, productivity-wise, and you are actively deactivating your infradian cycle. So you don't get the benefits, which we didn't even really get into when it comes to work, of these 4 different phases, right? Where you get to, let me give you the sort of personification of the 4 phases so you can kind of emotionally connect with each one and it doesn't feel so technical. So in the follicular phase, the hormones, the way everything is working metabolically, this is really about initiation. In the ovulatory phase, this is about communication, collaboration. In the luteal phase, this is about completion. And in the menstrual phase, this is about evaluation, right? Another way you can think about it is power, prepare, open up, work, and rest. And having access to this continuous cycling of dynamic focuses, right, is actually how you bring anything into fruition. How many of you here are manifesting something in your business, have learned a little bit about manifesting or bringing things out of the ether into creation, right? It starts with the ideation, followed by the communication of it, followed by the getting things done and harvesting, right? And then resting and evaluating and then making that next step. This is a huge part of the advantage that the infradian rhythm gives you as your brain chemistry is changing. So I share that because I think women should be aware of the opportunity cost that they are taking on when they shut this off with synthetic medication. Because that bleed that you're having is not a period, it's just a breakthrough bleed. And most women who are using these devices and insertables now, they don't have any bleeding. You are potentially shortchanging yourself from your creative and productive potential. And just to be clear, there was an attempt to put men on synthetic birth control. They had a small amount of men go through this study, and after 7 days, the guys were like, absolutely not. These side effects, bloating, breast tenderness, moodiness, hunger, appetite changes, personality changes, not worth it. And yet you've been conditioned to think, oh, I should just tolerate this. It's not the pill, it's me. I have to find one that works for me because something's wrong with me that this pill isn't working for me. No, your body does not want to shut down this very powerful activity. And I do think it's very dangerous that we are, as a society, putting younger and younger girls, as young as 13, on a medication that is shutting off this nascent infradian rhythm and shortchanging them of becoming, all that they can be. And it's not being studied. Spread the word. Great question. Thank you very much. You can learn all about it in that chapter that has no number. Yes.
As a follow-up to that,
Yeah.
I think also, let's say you are on the pill, how can we use your method to optimize our health? Like, 'cause I know in your book, so that when you're on the pill, you're not in your book, the other book you're talking about. She talks about, is that the book, this is your brain on birth control that you're talking about? Yeah, so she talks about how you're stuck in one phase.
Which is what I talk about. You're not stuck in any one phase in particular. You're in kind of like a phaseless no man's land.
Yeah.
You don't have enough. You're not in a luteal phase. You're not in because I was looking at are you maybe in a quasi-luteal phase? Not even that, because these hormones, the synthetic hormones, is really about giving you the lowest dose of estrogen and progesterone. So you don't even have enough to be in a luteal phase. So you don't actually have access to all the gifts of speeding up your metabolism, making you more efficient at burning. But this is why women struggle to maintain, balanced weight, for example, on the pill, or they struggle with skin issues, mood issues, 50% of women, I believe, who start taking synthetic birth control end up having to also take mood stabilizers as well. So it's a pretty powerful medication. We should have much more conversation about it. But yeah, the short answer is you can decide that when you're having your breakthrough bleed, that's when you're going to be in that phase, and then you can proceed accordingly. The truth is you're not actually going to be having any of these changes. The good news is if you start doing that and preparing your body to maybe transition off with support of your doctor, with doing all the proper things that we talk about. We have a whole birth control rehab free report you can download at Flow Living. Then you can regain your cycle without the post-birth control syndrome that is so problematic for women, because you go through this huge withdrawal of not being on this medication, and then you're in infrating rhythm trying to get started, and it's a little chaotic for a little while. Yeah. More questions?
After getting off of birth control, how long does it take for your
Cycle and everything to come back?
like actually come back?
It depends on how long you've been on the medication. It depends on your pre-existing hormonal issues. A lot of women are prescribed birth control because they have something like PCOS or fibroids or endometriosis. So now you're going to have to contend with cleaning that up. There's a second chapter in this biohacking section, in the biohacking toolkit part of the book, that answers questions like, well, what if I have endometriosis? What if I have, certain conditions? What do I do? So I answer all these and more for sure in the book, because it's a huge conversation. But the exciting thing is, whether you're on this medication now, or you're thinking of coming off of it, or you're not on it now and you're ready to start optimizing your health, the infrating rhythm is here. It's a new thing that you need to know about. Learning how to eat, exercise, and work in a way that supports that is what the cycle syncing method allows you to do. And it's just once you know it, it's like a total shift in your perspective. So you don't have to be worrying about or wondering, am I eating the right thing? Am I doing the right workout? If you're asking that question, you're probably looking at something that was, being done as research on men.
And as you learn it, it becomes more second nature. It seems a little daunting at first, just, coordinating all of that, but like anything else, once you put it into practice, it just kind of
Totally.
learn it.
And that's why the book has a chart for food, a chart for workouts, a chart for work, a chart for relationships and sex, a chart for motherhood if you're a mom, and that way it's an easy way to get started. But also tackle one area at a time, right? I've been doing this for a long time. I just do this as second nature, like you said. But you start with your food, or start with workouts, and see for yourself just how much better you feel, how much more in a state of flow you are. This was another thing that was really interesting to me as I was studying, human optimization, is this state of the peak flow state. How many of you heard of that, right? Well, for women, you can architect a peak flow state by eating, exercising, and planning your work according to the infradian cycle, so that you're, again, not in constant disruption, but in a constant state of in the flow, which is, of course, why I call the book In the FLO. More questions? Yes?
So do you, I guess I would wonder, do you suggest to track your period then in order to have a worry-free sex life off of birth control? Because it seems really...
Well, I assume you advocate non-hormonal birth control, like the copper IUD or condoms or something else.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really important as part, and we've talked a little bit about the ways that you can biohack, but there are 5 key ways that I think is a person can get started with this, and one of them speaks to your question. So the first thing you want to do when you're starting to biohack more effectively as a woman is you're going to you're going to change what you're eating each week, right? You're going to change the types of foods, whether they're cooked or raw. You're going to change the caloric load, depending on where you are, right? The second thing you're going to do is you're going to change the intensity of your workouts to match your metabolic and cortisol needs, okay? That means you're going to change it 4 times. You're also going to avoid intermittent fasting, keto, and high-intensity interval training each and every day. The fourth thing that you're going to do is you're going to track, right? We all got that now. The fourth thing you're going to do is you're going to track your cycle, right? And it's really important because you have to know when. You have to know where you are in the infradian cycle to know what to do when, right? So it's really important to know that. And a lot of us are using trackers. We have a tracker that also gives you the prompts for the cycle syncing method information. So it'll tell you're in this phase and it'll prompt you to say, okay, so remember this week, do these types of workouts, eat these types of foods, here's what's going on in your brain chemistry. So of course, being such a huge proponent of the supporting the infradian rhythm, I wanted to build an app that actually helped you optimize for that. And that app is called MyFLO. You can download it anywhere at myflowtracker.com, and that can really help you. But from a birth control, pregnancy prevention point of view, I do want to just remind everybody that the rhetoric that you heard in sex ed class, that you could get pregnant at any time, is not true. As somebody who helps women who are struggling with fertility, your egg is only viable for 24 to a maximum of 48 hours, and sperm can live, depending on the health of the man, if you are using sperm, from 3 to 5 days, which means you have a maximum fertile window, if you time it right, of 5 to 7 days out of the entire month. So knowing when you are fertile, right, which you can do in many different ways. You can urinate on a stick to see if your LH levels are surging. You can use basal body temperature tracking to know when you're ovulating. And then those days you can use double barrier methods if you're with a male partner and you're concerned about that, right? You can use something like the sponge or a cervical cap or a fem cap and a condom, and you're good to go, right? But this whole fear of you could get pregnant at any time is predicated on you having completely a blind spot about your cycle as a whole, which is exactly what we're talking about today, right? You have had no visibility into your infradian cycle. You've had no education about what these hormonal ratios are and how they affect your body and every system of your body. We've just been told that your hormones are this mysterious, unpredictable black hole of God knows what, and that you could get pregnant at any time. I mean, this is sex ed in 6th grade, right? And it's the curse. So remember that you are also psychologically working through that conditioning as you step into this new way of living. And that's why I put as much science into the book as possible, because the way that we can reduce our fear about coming home to our bodies is by getting educated about the scientific facts about them. So I built you a bridge of science for you to walk over to come home to who you are.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, Alisa. I just want to tell you I've been cycle tracking for 4 years now, and I've even gotten to the point where I know when my egg drops.
Yes, Mama. Of course you can. You can feel it.
It's like the feeling that comes over.
You can totally feel it.
And also I wanted just to sing your praises over the fact that my husband has Asperger's, and he gets your emails, and it's kind of a hilarious conversation every time he comes home, and he's like, so, you're in your follicular phase.
I bet that really makes him feel like empowered.
It does. It really does, and I appreciate that. There's a lot of buzz right now around like cycle syncing with the moon, and I'm just kind of more curious around your thoughts, only because I do know, as my mother was a midwife, that women do happen to give birth more around the full moon. Now this has been kind of told as a wise tale, right? But there is some sort of gravitational pull. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on
I have so many thoughts.
Okay.
You better believe it. Okay, so the long and short of it is that lunar cycles and your infradian biological rhythm do not follow the same pattern. I did do the research to really conclusively answer that question. However, given that our bodies are made up of 80% water, and that the lunar rhythm affects tidal patterns, aka bodies of water, if you are living more proximally to nature, where you have less light pollution at night, more access to moonshine and starshine, you will be more stimulated by that input, because our eyes and our brains actually adapted to taking in information, right? The circadian rhythm, we take in information to the brain from the eyes from sunrise and sunset and moon phases. So You can have some stimulation of things happening from that, but it doesn't always match up to your cycle. Nor should you feel bad if your cycle, if you're not ovulating on the full moon and menstruating on the new moon, which people talk about being the ideal way. You need to just be in regular rhythm with yourself and optimizing your infradian cycle. If you can have that happen, that's wonderful. You know, if you're living in a hut in the forest. But if you're living here, you probably haven't seen the moon in months. And your brain is not being stimulated by that information, and therefore it is not going to trickle down into your body. Right? Just science. Always science, people, always.
I bet Alisa will answer a few more questions during book signing, though, and
Yes.
obviously the book is just full of incredible information. It's like a massive feat, this book. So thank you for writing it, and thank you guys for being here tonight.